There you are now. I like the way the picture goes live before the sound does, and it's like do. My favourite thing about most Facebook Live videos is like, yeah, this is a Facebook Live, and we'll be on now in a couple of minutes, and there'll be people able to watch us in. So it's good that that hasn't happened to us, to the best of our knowledge so far. Owen, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very, very good morning to you.
And a very good morning to you. So there's actually lots happening overnight that we should tell you about. In the NFL, Josh McDaniels, who is the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, had agreed to sign as the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and was basically in the car on the way there to sign the contract when he decided, no, not going to do it. Having hired his entire backroom team, who have all signed contracts with the Colts, who are now like, we've got to move to Indianapolis and you're not going to be our head coach. That's, I think they call it a dick move in the industry.
I saw somebody saying that it proves that Josh McDaniels' run game is indeed exceeding against Indianapolis Colts right now. I don't understand really what that means. I've never watched Patriots play Colts except for in playoffs, but I'm sure his run game usually is very successful.
They always kill them in the playoffs. So somebody else was saying that perhaps this is revenge for Deflategate, because obviously it was the Colts who somehow managed to squeal on the Patriots that they've been deflating the balls. So there you go. That's McDaniels on the left talking with Bill Belichick. Again, speculation leading to a suggestion that perhaps this means the end of the Belichick era.
Maybe.
That like McDaniels is clearly next in line, that they value at the Patriots, that entire organisation values some kind of sense of continuity, and who knows, maybe that's what this is.
Or maybe he just got a sweetened contract, as reputable NFL journalist Adam Schefter has tweeted 7 hours ago.
NFL Insider, I think you're supposed to call
NFL
it. ESPN Insider.
He's like, he's unbelievably famous even within, like the players just call him Schefter. Or even Chef, I think some people call him like that. No journalist should be that famous amongst the players group. But so I would take his word that Rob Kraft is after offering Josh McDaniels a pretty big contract to help him stay. And
as far as I know, the amount of money you spend on your coaching ticket does not affect your cap space. So you can actually offer them whatever money you want, and it doesn't have any impact on your ability to sign players. So why wouldn't you sign people who you really believe in? But I don't know. I think it shortens the window that you're going to see Belichick there.
It kind of, maybe not immediately, but it certainly seems that he wants to keep McDaniels for the long term. Is it going to be in 12 months, 24 months maybe? It'd be very interesting to see the exact details of this contract. I'm not sure how transparent the contractual processes are when it comes to NFL coaching, but if there's no cap space, you'd imagine they don't need to be that transparent.
I think they're still pretty transparent, because you need to be able to, other teams need to be able to offer you positions if it's a better position. So you know the way in the build-up to the Super Bowl, they're all off doing job interviews, which seems absolutely crazy. Like, why would you allow some of your best staff to be... But it's like the employment agreement that they all signed when they signed up for the NFL was that we can steal each other's coaches.
It's pretty good.
It's an amazing thing. I can't decide if I really like it or if it's just weird.
Well, I'm not sure. Is it more kind of sneaky or less sneaky than the managerial merry-go-round that we experienced in the Premier League?
No, it's far more, you're right, it's the opposite of sneakiness, really. It's like, I'm actually interviewing here, we're ringing this guy. There's sometimes where you're allowed to refuse permission if it's like a move sideways, but I think if it's a move up, or if people are at a certain stage of their career, you can't block that job interview. Just to run you through some of the stuff that happened last night, Carlos Carvajal is going to be reunited with the club who sacked him on Christmas Eve in round 5 of the FA Cup. Swansea won 8-1 last night against Notts County at the Liberty, so they're going to be up against Sheffield Wednesday in the next round. Huddersfield are going to be at home to Man United in round 5. They went to extra time against Birmingham before eventually winning 4-1. Birmingham and Villa, the Midlands Derby, is taking place on Sunday or Saturday morning at 11:30.
Johnny Ward is over there. He's
for that game.
Yeah, he flew over after
Secret
our piece with
Birmingham City fan, yeah. Newport County obviously up against Spurs tonight. All eyes from an Irish perspective on Carlos Porrick-Amond, who scored in the 1-1 draw in the first game. But, you know, Spurs are in reasonably good form at the moment. It's at Wembley. You would expect them to cruise through that. In Gaelic games, Tralee IT did not have David Clifford to play in the Sigerson Cup quarter-final, and so they got hammered by DIT 317-17. Would he have made that much difference? Is it possible they would have won that game with David Clifford? Is he that good?
If we could warp time, this is the real test of how good David Clifford is. If you could go back into time to one sporting moment, you would go back to last night in Austin Stack Park, and really, it's almost like the Tesla rocket launch. This would be the David Clifford kind of scientific experiment. How good is he? Will he be able to turn around an absolute annihilation into a victory?
Maybe Elon Musk, maybe that's the next thing that he's going to be able to do. Fix sports events to end all bar arguments forever.
Maybe, yeah, that'd be very good.
If Roy Keane played in the World Cup, we'd have won it. And there you go, Elon Musk rolls out and goes, well, excuse me, actually you'd have been beaten in the semi-finals.
But I'm not sure, just from doing a bit of speed reading on that, they've overshot Mars this morning and they're heading towards an asteroid belt, which actually sounds a little bit scary.
Screw you, Elon Musk, is what I'm hearing from you.
But Elon Musk has tweeted saying, oh, it's great, we've overshot Mars, as if this is some sort of achievement. That
maybe they didn't want to hit Mars. I don't know. Was the plan to hit Mars? I don't think it was.
No, it wasn't. It was to do like a little bit of an orbit, but the orbit is now a much bigger parabola.
Right. Okay. Good shoehorning of parabola and the space rocket launch into Off the Ball AM this morning on. I salute you.
Congratulations on everybody on improving their IQ this morning by 2 points.
So DIT are up against UCC or NUI Galway in the semi-finals. They're going to play today, and DCU and UCD will play today to end up against UUJ, who also won last night. And then in the Fitzgibbon Cup, those games are all on today as well. So there you go. That's pretty much it. I would suggest that that's one of the more quiet sports. What day of the week is it? Wednesday. Wednesday mornings that you're going to get all season.
Because Wednesdays are always booming with action. I suppose next week we've got the Champions League back.
Well, there you go. We'll have plenty to talk about.
We will indeed.
Not that we don't have plenty to talk about today. What's coming up on today's show? I hear you ask. It's 7:51 and you haven't told us yet, so I'll tell you now. Dirty Kerry Part 2 Redux. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. We'll run you through the back pages as well. The potential Ireland 15 against Italy. The newspapers have decided that they think Jordan Larmour is starting, or at least that's what's going to make people pick up the newspapers today. Ross Tucker is going to talk to us this morning about Chris Froome, the Russian athletes who want to compete in the Winter Olympics, and their perpetual cases against the IOC, who are really now standing against the Court of Arbitration for Sport and perhaps anti-doping generally. It's all a bit of a mess. We might also talk to him about the spat that he's been involved in with Paula Radcliffe on Twitter as well. And then Scott Evans, who shot to prominence really over the course of the last 2 Olympic Games as Ireland's greatest ever purveyor of badminton.
I thought you were going to say Ireland's greatest ever topless superstar. I saw somebody go with the headline yesterday, Scott Evans hangs up the shirt, which I thought was a very good pun because, you know, the way he didn't really hang up the shirt in Rio, did he? He just kind of took it off and flung it somewhere as the men's hockey team were kind of hooping and hollering, which was one of the highlights of Rio 2016, really, from an Irish perspective, kind of outside of the couple of medal winners we did have. It was kind of like the boxing low, and then suddenly this euphoric high of seeing Scott Evans with his top off after getting into the last 9 of the badminton competition. So it's a strange moment that everybody kind of remembers, but without it ever producing a medal. Is it one of those moments? Is it the most memorable non-medal moment in recent Olympic history for Ireland?
Sonia finished 4th in 92. I mean, I realise it's before your time.
Well, I said recent Olympic history.
Yeah, I mean, it feels recent when you're of a certain age, Owen.
Thomas Barr as well would be up there.
Yeah.
But certainly Scott Evans, it was kind of a great moment of camaraderie, as I say, between the Irish Olympic team, because of the hockey players there in the arena just cheering him on, just like a little cohort at the back, and they also took their tops off and were swinging them around. So certainly a highlight of the decade for me, Ireland's greatest sporting moment. Forget Johnny Sexton in Paris last weekend. Scott Evans topless in Rio is number 1.
There you go. You like topless?
No, I was just saying that it was a memorable moment, that's all.
Right.
I thought it was amusing.
What's the story with Dirty Kerry Part 2? Why are we revisiting this story? Well, primarily because Owen started a tribal war yesterday on our Facebook page. Kevin Shield, not a big GAA fan, but watched their game against Mayo last summer and thought they were the most unsportsmanlike bunch of cheats I'd ever seen play sport. When they weren't throwing cowardly digs at their opposite numbers, they were bawling at the referee in a way that wouldn't even be tolerated in soccer, he says. Then I was treated to the joy of listening to their fans screaming obscenities at the referee and officials using language that was nothing short of disgusting. Fair play to you, Kevin Shield, for actually finding that small pocket of Kerry supporters who made the trip to Croke Park to watch the games against Mayo, at least according to Mikey Sheehy, because there was almost no Kerry fans there, if we're to take his comments at face value. And then he was the second part of that one. Sorry, yeah, stick that one back up for me. So people were asking him, you know, what was the story? What was so bad about it? I brought 2 children to see that match. I was disgusted by the behaviour of the Kerry players and even more so by their fans. That's your people, Owen. Admittedly, a small minority of them, but still a significant enough number to sour my experience at Croke Park that day. I'd been there a few weeks before that to watch Dublin play Kildare and came away with a completely different opinion of the sport and its fans. I wouldn't like to bring children to a Kerry match again. based on that day.
That's absolute and utter rubbish. Absolute.
I'm from Kildare, by the way, he says, so no pro-Dublin agenda or anything like that. In fact, you would have to assume that he hates Dublin because that's what he's been taught to do. So,
not really. If he said he was in Croke Park a couple of weeks previous to that to watch his team get absolutely annihilated by Dublin, there would have been no reason for anybody to even get remotely angry at that game because...
So he's an honest broker is what you're saying. You're right. I agree. So his experience of the Kerry fans, you better...
No, it was his initial experience at Croke Park 2 weeks prior to that was just a neutral vanilla experience of what sport ought to be.
So a lot of people responding. Oh, McLove, the original, says, Mayo are the dirtiest team around. I might be a Kerry man, but I hope Dublin hammer them every day of the week in Croker. Paul Leonard, they've been dirty for years and people are only realising it now. This is very funny, coming from one of the biggest cheats in the game. No, I'm not having that. Just because you throw a GPS doesn't mean you're a cheat.
Yeah, I don't like the equation of a GPS throwing to scumbaggery. I guess some people on this lovely Commons thread would equate it to scumbaggery, and I'm not sure do I go along with that.
We've had to abbreviate the next comment because it's so hot that you have to get onto our Facebook page to read it there. Stick it back up first. The GPS man should do some stand-up comedy. All he's done in the last 2 All-Irelands is try to stop Diarmuid Connolly from playing football by pulling and dragging him off him, sorry, and hoping Connolly would get sent off. And then I don't know what the rest of that is, but it's obviously too hot to publish. So all he's done in the last 2 All-Ireland finals is pull and drag Diarmuid Connolly. I mean, that definitely didn't score some of the greatest scores that we've ever seen in an All-Ireland final. Definitely didn't put in absolutely astonishing quality of performances. Definitely did not do that. That did not happen. That's not what happened.
Let's go back to this Kildare person commenting for a sec. What an absolute complete load of nonsense. I've never read anything that not only do I disagree with wholeheartedly, but I'm like, that is patently incorrect. That couldn't be more incorrect. Well, like, how you can possibly watch any of those games and differentiate. I'm not saying it was a clean game. I'm not saying the fans were clean. What I'm saying is, how on earth can you possibly say this group of supporters are far more vocal in a viscerally absurd sort of way than the other group of supporters and their players have followed suit? Like, this is the first time I've heard, I don't know, Kerry being mentioned in this way with regards to that match, independent of Mayo.
Well, we haven't talked about it before. We never asked anybody, what was your experience with the Kerry fans that day?
Because both fans were, like, I will be the first to admit that Kerry fans can have an edge to them.
What does that mean?
But Mayo fans haven't even...
Why do fans have an edge?
But Mayo fans have an even sharper edge. Maybe because there's more of them, maybe because they're more vocal, but certainly that edge is more apparent. This kind of... just pure boiling of hatred. Every pore and sinew of their body is just screaming obscenities at the opposition players, and it just gets horrible at times. You know, whenever Kieran Donaghy gets the ball, the Dublin fans in particular love to just absolutely hurl horrible abuse at him, which I don't know why that ever started. Mayo have followed this bandwagon as well, and especially when Donaghy comes on the pitch. Like, I'm not sure what match this guy was watching. I'm not sure how he possibly... Like, there is no such thing as a pocket of Kerry fans in Croke Park because all the fans get spread out. So I don't know what conditions this person was in that he formed this opinion.
So he was a neutral who had brought his kids to the game and left disgusted by the Kerry fans and their inability to take defeat with good grace. That's what he basically was.
He didn't say that.
I'm paraphrasing.
No, you're making it up. He didn't say anything about being defeated in good grace, did he?
No, because there was no good grace about them. He said there was vile obscenities hurled.
I guarantee you, for every one vile obscenity hurled by a Kerry supporter, there were at least 4 or 5 by a Mayo supporter.
What about the Mayo fans? That's what you're saying.
No.
Yes. But that's what you're saying.
Okay.
What about the Mayo fans?
But that he is singling out the Kerry fans here, which is just a ridiculous thing to do.
That's his experience. He was right beside them.
But no, I'm also making that point that you don't actually get pockets of Kerry fans independent of each other or independent of any Mayo fans.
You're saying you disagree with Paddy O'Shea that Kerry fans are not the roughest type of fucking animals you could ever deal with.
Of course, because that's obviously not true. It's just not true. Like, do you think it's true?
I'm not here. I'm literally just here to try and get the truth.
No, hold on a minute.
I'm not here to express an opinion either way. This guy has attached your tribe of people, and you're interested.
Who's your least favourite GAA supporter?
I love them all equally.
Who's your least favourite?
I don't really have an opinion on. I don't go and.
What's the most angry you've ever been at Croke Park?
when the ball comes back down off the upright, how is it a square ball?
What's the most angry you've been towards supporters at Croke Park?
I wouldn't be angry at supporters. What's the point of getting angry at supporters?
So what's the point of this comment then? Why are you bringing up this comment? What's the point of...
Because you've been attacking the Mayo fans since you were in their midst in...
Well, they literally did start coming over to me and saying that, a friend of mine was a disgrace, and, you know, I'm not going to let that slide.
Oh, your honour was challenged.
Our honour was... Of course it was challenged. Your honour is an important thing, Ger.
It's not really.
It is an important thing.
It's not, at least all sorts
It is. You were there. You are a representative of the county, especially on an away day in the league when there is minimal support.
Honour leads to fights outside Chippers. It's bollocks.
Well, we didn't get into any fights outside Chippers, so...
only in the stands.
Our honour was upheld. I just think this is completely ridiculous, as you've rightly pointed out, and now...
So you're saying Kerry aren't dirty and Kerry fans are grand? Oh yeah, this is what kicked it all off. Biggest Mayo chant of the night arrives when Kerry get reduced to 13 men. This is a live tweet from 8:19 p.m. on Saturday evening. Almost as impressive as the Mayo chant when Shane Nally roared in Sean O'Shea's face to taunt him when he missed the Kerry penalty.
All true. Yeah. All absolutely...
Factually correct.
And I watched League Sunday back last night, and the roar is appreciable after Gavin Crowley gets sent off, which is when Kerry get reduced to 13 men. It's very... I'm not saying...
But they thought that there should have been a red card earlier for the foul on Evan O'Regan.
No, that was Ronan Shanahan.
But they felt that there should have been. It doesn't matter. The crowd, the blood is up because they see one of their guys get concussed / face broken.
Yep.
In a dirty challenge, they say.
Hold on, that tweet there was literally 2 facts. I didn't cast any aspersions. I didn't say this is a disgrace. I didn't say I'm never bringing my kids to this game again. I didn't say...
have kids.
That I'm never coming back to make out Park. I just stated facts, and as far as I'm concerned, this case is closed.
I would have been worried if you were just tweeting, I'm not bringing my kids to this game again.
Can we just bring this back up in the summer, because this is it's beyond the joke at this point, and every single morning there's more of this crap that it gets me a little bit angry, Ger.
It gets you what?
It gets me a little bit angry.
That's good. All winning fans are assholes, says Meade's Tommy Rooney in my ear.
Were the Meath Hill fans assholes when they won the Meath Junior Championship last year?
Yeah. And he says Meath fans used to be assholes when they were winning. I mean, sorry, I think we can all agree on that.
Meath Armagh fans as well, back in their glory day. Tyrone fans were actually relatively nice, it must be said.
Pardon me?
Tyrone fans were actually relatively nice. From my own experiences. You disagree?
You're literally the only Kerry man I've ever heard say that.
I've never had any personal problem. Armagh, very noticeably more boisterous than Tyrone in a bad way.
Wow.
Noticeably, yeah.
That's a hot take.
It is a hot take. Like, obviously there is plenty of reason for them to rub our faces in it, but never experienced it. And then last year, all of a sudden, boom, Mayo win once, and it was like, whoa, these fans are different to the ones that we've beaten all these years. Yeah,
well, that's the whole point. You were probably patronising them the way that, you know...
Patronising is better than, you know, calling them any word under the sun.
Patronising is not good.
Anyway.
That's where that took us. You revealed your true character. Yeah, we patronised them for years. It's great. Right, so that was an interesting little diversion. Let's bring you through what's in the morning newspapers. Where are we starting?
We'll start with the Times Ireland edition, and as you mentioned a little bit earlier on, Jordan Larmour set for test bow against Italy. That's Gary Doyle's story there. It's mostly off Richie Murphy's quotes yesterday that Jordan Larmour, he wouldn't say he's not ready for Six Nations action, so I guess the headline really does say it. He is set for Six Nations action. Whether or not he's going to start remains to be seen. I think last Wednesday we had a team in one of the papers that turned out to be the correct team. We haven't got that across the papers this morning, but the lines across all the back pages are that Larmour is set for a test bow. In the Sports Wednesday in the Irish Times, Larmour very close to making his test debut, reads the headline on the bottom there. Gordon Darcy's column, Endgame showed power of the Schmidt way, reads the headline on that. While on the front of the Irish Examiner sports section, Driven to Succeed, reads the headline, Keith Earls pushes for extra 1% in pursuit of Ireland glory. I think we've started a war here between Kerry, Mayo and Dublin fans generally, which, you know, might not be the worst thing. Well, this morning my plan, to be honest, was just to throw a grenade and let Dublin and Mayo fans go at it, and let's just get us out of the situation.
How did that work out?
Not very well, clearly. It's 20 minutes into the show and I'm angry.
What are you angry about?
Just life.
Digger, how you doing? Good morning to you. Says, I'm with Owen Sheehan. Firstly, off the ball, Aidan O'Shea was pulling Crowley's jersey all evening and trying to impose himself. Well, imagine that! Imagine that! How filthy is that? Not filthy at all, Digger. And
Gavin Crowley.
Other than that, I think Owen is right to defend his mate. We need more Kerry representation. Sorry, hang on a second. Incredible arrogance. Sorry, he's actually tweeted twice in quick succession, so I've merged them. I'll start again. I'm with Owen Sheehan. Firstly, at off the ball, Aidan O'Shea was pulling Crowley's jersey all evening and trying to impose himself, which is his job. Mayo fans are strange. Incredible arrogance despite winning sweet fuck all. Only Kerry man to ever say that about Tyrone fans, by the way. Was he on heroin when in the stands for the Tyrone matches? Other than that, I think Owen is right to defend his mate. We need more Kerry representation.
Yeah, started at heroin from, at the age of 12. No, go on.
I mean, it would be credible in some cases, but not yours. Don't worry about it. Soaring county team cost top 25 million quid. This is a really interesting story. This is getting to the point now where the figures are so huge that it's going to be very hard for anybody to start going, that's fine, that's grand. If you add in the fact that Leitrim have only 300 grand of this, then you start to see that there's a massive imbalance in the amount of money being spent. Cork are top of the tree, I think, on 1.75 million, yeah. So great work from Colin Keaton. You can expect to see the breakdown of this. He does this every year, and it means that over a period of time you start to build this incredible picture of exactly where the trend is, and he's saying that there's like an over 30% increase since 2011. So a phenomenal increase in spend. Part of it is put down to the fact that the mileage rate for intercounty players has increased, and part of it is also put down to the fact that there's now a set amount of money for intercounty players for their nutrition. That money goes straight from the GAA to the county board to the player, so it's not actually an increase in the cost for the county boards, but at the same time you can see that there is a certain group of people who are just waiting for these figures to come out and go, ah! And look, they might be right. Maybe we're spending too much money on intercounty football, and maybe the return on investment isn't in all counties what it is in the counties who spend their money most wisely. So, on to some of the tabloids. Have you seen this man? Mara is still missing after collapse of City move, but Foxes are ready to forgive all because, frankly, they should have cashed in when they had the opportunity to, and now they're going to not get him to play for the rest of the season, which means they get no value for the money that they're spending on wages, and in the summer they'll have to sell him at a reduced rate. It was like there reaches a tipping point where the clubs have to realise the player has the power. Conte won't walk. That was pretty much what we were talking about yesterday on the show. Gary Breen called that one 100% accurately. Why the hell would you walk away when you stick around for another 2 weeks, lose 2 more games, and they pay you to leave anyway? So Conte's still in charge, as Abramovich stands firm. There's a clock on this, basically, and I think the doomsday point for that clock is midnight after the Barcelona game. If they're still in the tie after that game, he stays in the job. If they get beaten 3 or 4-0, he's out. Right?
Yeah, I think it's probably accurate. I just hope, like we've discussed this multiple times, I hope he gets to the end of February and we do get that Manchester United game.
Yeah, totally. And so then obviously there's loads of stuff about the 60th anniversary of the Munich air disaster, pictures from Old Trafford and pictures from the various parts of the world where memorials were held. This is Carry On Conte. It's a great picture of Antonio Conte. You kind of have to see it from distance to actually go, yeah, that's Conte. It is a brilliant picture. Coach determined to stay after heavy Chelsea defeats, and then the Racing Post.
I think on the front of that, they've actually got a further development on our story from yesterday.
Fresh blow for At the Races as Chelmsford switches to Racing UK. So this is the story where Racing UK, which is not part of your basic package in this country at the moment, will be showing all of the Irish racing from the 1st of January 2019, and it's been considered to be a huge blow by people within the racing industry, effectively meaning that it's going to be less coverage for more money to the UK audience in particular. Racing UK say they're going to rebrand, so it won't just be Racing UK anymore, which might mean that they sell some more subs. And it's been defended by Brian Kavanagh, the chief executive of Horse Racing Ireland. That's in one of the other newspapers. They've got a comment from him saying that this guarantees financial stability into, I think, 2023 for their rights holders. And so he's in a tricky position because obviously, as Johnny Ward pointed out in the show yesterday, 80% of the racecourse's income comes from television. And if you can guarantee 80% of your income for the next 5 years at a higher rate than you already had it, what are you going to do? You're going to say, yeah, we're going to take that because that guarantees us stability. But at what cost? So we'll wait and see. Maybe more people end up going racing to see it because they can't watch it on TV. Who knows?
Just to round up a couple of the last papers, on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, it goes with Conte bores us. Stars fed up as Chelsea boss clings to his job. While on the back of the Herald, it says players back Conte. Luis Enrique not in frame as manager gets a stay of execution at the Bridge. While on the back of the Sun, it says you're for the door. Champions League spot is key to Conte fate. Clock ticking on Blues boss. You've also got keep diving Dele. Poch backs his fall guy. Mauricio Pochettino says Dele Alli can carry on diving and insisted it is just one of the tricks in football.
You're for the door.
Top four.
Okay.
Champions League spot is key to Conte fate.
I thought it was a Hodor reference from Game of Thrones. Can I have the mirror, perhaps? I have the mirror. So I think the mirror has the tab of the day, tab of the morning for you.
In the meantime, just while
that pun really works when you screw it up, doesn't it?
There's one more back page that we haven't. It's the back of the Irish Daily Star. Carry on Conte, Chelsea boss safe for now. So
just to open up the Earl story on that for me. But definitely tab of the morning to you. Flight of the Earls. It never struck me until I read it. That's what a good tabloid pun should be. It's like,
Yeah, and it kind of makes you feel good about yourself. It's like, yeah, I've got background knowledge and I know what the Flight of the Earls is.
Yeah, well, I mean, every school kid in Ireland knows what. It's still on the syllabus, right?
I hope so.
Because the other ones are like Catch of the Day, which is, Catch of the Day, grand, Catch of the Day. You get any restaurant, but it's grand. Flight of the Earls, on the other hand.
Yeah, excellent, yeah. It's a solid 8 out of 10. And tab of the morning to you indeed.
Tab of the morning to you indeed. Tab of the day. Right. Jordan Larmour, the clamour for him to start against Italy has been rising from rugby fans. He just really want to see exactly what he could do in the circumstances. Brian O'Driscoll was on the show on Monday morning and he told us that, have a look and see what he had to say.
Pointed with.
Does Jordan Larmour start?
Possibly. I don't know where he starts. I still think that he starts him on the wing if he's going to start him somewhere. There's a bit more protection there. You won't see the best of his attacking play because you need it. You need that in counter attack when the ball's kicked down to him. I wonder. See, Jacob Stockdale's not done a whole lot wrong. He didn't have his best game ever. He had that moment of the Teddy Thomas try. Yeah. But he was relatively quiet. Rob Kearney had a good first 30 minutes and then a couple of errors. So does he give them another go against Italy or does he get brave and put Jordan Larmour in? I think it's a good game to put him in personally. If he wants to see him in that World Cup squad in Japan in 2019, I think this is a good game to start him with.
Yeah.
Because there's a protection to this. If we're not beating Italy, reasonably comfortably at home, with this caliber of team now, we gotta look at ourselves, or what are we going to do in a World Cup? So, I think it's a good chance to play Jordan now.
Okay, so Richie Murphy pretty much said exactly the same thing in his press conference yesterday, that he's very close to starting. Ordinarily, yesterday, Carton House, the press or various people would have been able to kind of sneak a peek through the window to see, look at the team is lined up. Well, there's Sexton and Murray and, Larmour's in that team. Larmour might be starting, lads. But there was gym sessions only yesterday, so the information we have is purely, at the moment, based off what Richie Murphy was saying.
I don't think a team's been decided yet. I think that often happens when you've been abroad for the first game and then you've got to travel home. You kind of lose a day that way. And also with the first game of the season, I'm sure Joe Schmidt had his mind made up about the France team weeks in advance because you don't have a game to judge them on beforehand. After the Champions Cup games, Joe Schmidt was probably one session in the Carton House, whatever, make up his mind regarding the team, or at least having a very close idea. So I think genuinely they just don't know yet, but we do know that he is well in the mix, that Jordan Larmour will be on the bench at least, I would suspect, for the Italy game this weekend. It will be great to see him start. Is it a risk?
No. Don't think it's a risk. He's great. He's a superstar genius. He's George Best. Get him out there. I don't think it's a risk.
I tend to agree with that, all right. The other thing, though, of course, is Joey Carberry at 10. Like, do you play Larmour at 15, Carberry at 10, and throw them all in there, see the future of Irish rugby all at once?
Well, it's an interesting question, and one that was put to Joey Carberry yesterday. He was talking about Johnny Sexton generally. Here he is speaking with Oisin Langan yesterday.
Yeah, I suppose, and learning from him, but then if you're competing with the best, then you have to obviously be better yourself. So I looking at it that way rather than not being played. He's making me better, and I know me being better will make him better as well. So even like if you watch it the last 5 minutes, if I can take half of what he did there into my game, then I'll be improving every day.
Have you ever been the subject of one of Johnny's kind of famous bits of narkiness? Players who've played with him over the years have said that he can be narky in training. It's a good thing, it improves them, but has he ever been a bit snappy with you for anything? Have you learned through that?
I suppose sometimes, yeah, but like he just wants perfection, and that makes everyone, I suppose, play better. So you don't mind it too much if you're on the end of it.
Does he give you much advice in general, Joey, or does he see you as an opponent, or is he a mentor, or what's he like?
He does give me advice, and especially when it comes down to kicking and stuff. He has some great drills and can help me out. And then even just through phase play, he could have been like, oh, you could have done this better. So it's a great person to have, and just chatting to him, I know I can always go to him if I have a question, and he'll give me an honest answer.
Is it important for you to be your own person as well? I mean, it's great to have Johnny there to learn from the best, but you need to be your own player as well, so there's a balance, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. Like I can only add certain bits to my game. I'll never be the same player as Johnny, so if I can take little bits from his game and add it to my game, I suppose I'll be learning from him.
Yeah, pretty interesting that Joey Carberry was put before the media yesterday. Not that we read too much into that. He is part of the matchday squad, and that's guaranteed to be part of the matchday squad. But if he's going to get Six Nations, if he's going to start a Six Nations game, perhaps this is the one that he starts, and maybe they make the decision to start him and not Larmour.
Maybe. Certainly he's got that little bit of extra test experience. But I think being in front of the media is a big sign. You know, Jacob Stockdale last week in front of the media, we're like, yes, this guy's going to start. Of course, the matchday squad thing, he's guaranteed to be in there regardless, Carberry. So maybe it's a wild card from the Irish management that they know that they know he's going to be in the squad anyway. So you can't really read too much into it. Yeah,
well, we should have a fair idea of what the team is in tomorrow morning's newspapers, and obviously we'll bring you that on the show. But let's move on, because the Winter Olympics is nearly upon us, and there is a massive drug scandal brewing even before the whole thing starts. It appears as if it is now the International Olympic Committee versus the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Ross Tucker is on the line from South Africa to talk us through what is one of the biggest messes that I can ever remember in anti-doping history. And we've seen some pretty big messes in anti-doping history. Ross, just to maybe bring us up to speed, what is the latest situation?
Yeah, I'll try. It's difficult to keep track of what's happening, actually. It seems as though, right, you'll recall that in December last year, the IOC banned 39 Russian athletes on the basis of a number of different investigations, one of which was the McLaren report, where they uncovered evidence of systematic doping in Russia at the Sochi Olympics back in 2014. So having been banned, those athletes then appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Their bans were overturned because the courts ruled that there was insufficient evidence that those athletes had committed anti-doping violations. The IOC in response said, well, fine, you can unban them, but we're still not inviting them to the Olympics. And so now there's a group, I think I saw this morning, of 15 of those Russian Olympic athletes are taking the IOC back to the Court of Arbitration. And they are, you can imagine, very hastily convening an emergency meeting or hearing so that they can review the cases of those 15 athletes. And so it's a back and forth between the IOC and the Court of Arbitration for Sport at this stage, condensed into far too short a time. I mean, it's not like this wasn't obviously going to happen, but it's all playing out 3 or 4 days before the event starts.
What does it fundamentally mean for people's ability to believe in the anti-doping process?
Oh, there's none. There's no capital left in anti-doping, in my opinion. And you know, when you introduced the segment, you said it's a doping scandal brewing. This is a slow cooker. This thing's been brewing for 4 years. Like when you think in 2016, just before the Olympic Games in Rio, the same discussion was being held around whether the IOC should ban Russia from competing at those Olympic Games. And now 2 years later, we make it all the way to December. We've got 6 weeks till the Olympic Games, and they still hadn't reached a decision. And then they reached the decision, and now it's a spat between the IOC and the Court of Arbitration. So there's very little confidence. No one knows who's in control. No one even knows who's to blame. The IOC blames the Court of Arbitration. The Court of Arbitration's blaming the IOC. WADA, in the meantime, is blaming everyone. It's very difficult to know who to trust in this, and there's very little credibility. You're going to have a minimum of 169 Russian athletes, probably more, because I think these 15 will win this case. And they're competing basically as Russian athletes, if not by name, then in every other way. And how can you trust that team? But then comes the other issue, is that's Russia. Now we have to believe that they're the only ones? Of course not. So it's very difficult to watch any sport at this stage with any belief in what you're seeing having integrity, you know?
From the Court of Arbitration and Sports findings last week, were they making a judgment on what they believed was the credibility of Grigory Rodchenkov, or were they just making a procedural point that the ban that the IOC handed down was incorrect from a legal perspective?
That's a good question, and I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that, because when the Court of Arbitration for Sport reaches these decisions, they issue what's called a reasoned decision, which explains in detail how they arrived at the decision they made. Those reasoned decisions aren't available yet. Even the IOC apparently hasn't seen them, or at least Thomas Bach hasn't seen them, if he's to be believed. So we don't actually know. But what it seems has happened is that the Court of Arbitration has evaluated every single one of those cases independently, and they've asked, is there sufficient evidence for this athlete, athlete 1, athlete 2, athlete 3? And they've decided that in the case of 29 of those athletes, there wasn't sufficient evidence. Now, the argument that Rodchenkov's lawyer is making, and they issued a press release. There's an article came out yesterday in the Washington Post. He's basically saying that they should have been able to ban the Russians based on the now fairly well-established wholesale evidence of a global systematic doping program that was going on. But it seems as though Rodchenkov is coming from the perspective of all the Russians were doping. I know this because I'm the one who did it. Whereas the Court of Arbitration is saying, prove to us that each individual athlete was doping. And that seems to be where the tension exists. But only the reasoned decisions will provide the specific answers to that.
Ross, did you feel that the initial process of banning these athletes was a little bit problematic because there was life bans handed out? Because it certainly seemed to me that the implementation of life bans and people who were for that argument, that took a huge blow last week with this decision from the CAS.
Right, and there's precedent for life bans being chucked out by the CAS because ahead of, I think it was, I've lost track of time now, but I think it was the London Olympic Games, the UK anti-doping agency tried to ban a couple of their own athletes from competing in the Olympics. So that's not a life ban from all sport, it's just an Olympic ban, and that was tossed out as well. So yeah, I do think that was problematic. They were never going to get away with a complete ban from the Olympic Games, especially announcing it in December and then having to argue their case within the next month.
Is there a solution to that, maybe in an 8-year ban for cases, because it's effectively a life ban by the time you come back 8 years later? Most of the impact of the drugs that you've been taking should have worn off. Is there, we're really clutching the straws here and deal with minor points around the edges, but is there some way that we can start to navigate some pathway through this type of stuff?
Yeah, as you say, changing the length of the ban is slapping a coat of paint on a dilapidated building a little bit, because in the end, the problem was not the ban length, it was the fact that they couldn't catch these guys in the first place, and now we've seen an overreaction maybe to that. I would say 6 to 8 years would be fine. I mean, you know, 4 years ago it was 2-year ban, and they've increased it to 4, so I guess that was progress, but it's not a deterrent. The size of the punishment is not a deterrent if there's no chance of the punishment ever being received. So that to me is a bigger problem. So I think anti-doping needs a structural overhaul, and it needs, I think, 3 things. 1 is much more transparency. 2 is they have to get rid of the numerous conflicts of interest. I mean, what last week has shown is how many potential conflicts of interest there are that need to be navigated. And that applies to national governing bodies, anti-doping agencies who have to effectively police themselves. I don't think that's trustworthy, and that's been shown for years. And then the final one is better investigation. I mean, how many times have we seen in the last decade that the media are the ones who blow the story open in anti-doping, and then WADA and the IOC or the IAAF or whoever it is, they get dragged along behind the media story, and that seems to me to be backwards. So I think they have to change those 3 things, and that requires a complete overhaul in anti-doping, which, where's the appetite to do that? You're asking turkeys to vote for Christmas, basically. It's not going to happen. So
WADA needs to be broken apart and the constituent parts removed from any influence of the businesses that actually run it, and the businesses that run it are the governing bodies and the big sports competitions, and the businesses that run them are ultimately the sponsors. That link needs to be broken somehow, and then a new organisation set up that has credibility. Like it feels pie in the sky at the moment.
It is, because the key thing that would bind all those stakeholders together is the idea of who's got the incentive to catch doping or to eradicate doping. And at the moment, no one. And so even Richard Pound, who was in the news yesterday because he criticized the IOC's handling of the case and then was himself attacked by his own IOC colleagues, which tells you about the tension and the conflict within the IOC. But Richard Pound was the first head of WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and he's on record saying that there's no appetite to successfully undertake an anti-doping program. So in the absence of appetite, we always say where there's a will, there's a way. The reality is there's no will, because until they can figure out how to incentivize actually catching doping as opposed to letting it go by, how would you ever, no matter what you put together, the structure, the concepts, the strategy, none of it will work because there's no desire to actually make it work.
You mentioned Rodchenkov's lawyer there. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago, Jim Walden, and he said there's a lot more to come from Grigory Rodchenkov. But at this point, with Rodchenkov's evidence, with the McLaren report, it seems like the legacy of that report and of Icarus and the likes has been completely destroyed as a result of the events of the last week. That we thought that this was a seminal moment in anti-doping and that WADA would take this up and lead the fight at long last. But this just hasn't happened. In fact, the opposite has occurred. Yeah,
exactly. And so yesterday I saw the WADA Athletes Commissioner called for strong leadership. It's been 2.5 years now since the McLaren report came out, and that was the moment for strong leadership on the part of the IOC, perhaps WADA. And WADA's been accused of being basically a public relations body who was put there to make it look like anti-doping was happening. I think in some respects, that's a little bit harsh, but you also look at some of the responses to the Russian scandal from the very top of WADA, and you think to yourself, well, they clearly didn't want this. It fell into their lap like a burning hot potato, and it's been passed about as much as possible, but no one's actually done anything to own a change that will come out of this. So you're exactly right. The opportunity has been lost, and where there was a chance to potentially regain some credibility by showing strong leadership, they've undermined it even further through not showing any at all.
In the meantime, cycling obviously has, it's really got its stuff together on this stuff. And Chris Froome, the most famous and most successful cyclist in the world, ends up with a positive test, and yet next week he's going to be back in the saddle. They deny it's a positive test, but certainly that's how it's been reported.
Yes, and what I find most bizarre about this is that there has been no commitment to a end of the process. I can't understand why they couldn't say at the moment that the test was announced or leaked. This is another example of the media dragging the situation into the public eye. Why couldn't you say at that moment that on the 16th of February or March, whatever it is, the hearing will be held and we will make a decision? It's just, in the vacuum that's created by that lack of clarity, we now have all this uncertainty. So Froome will go off and race a couple of races. Maybe he'll even make it to the start line of the Giro. Maybe he'll even defend his tour title. And then possibly in August this year, we'll finally resolve a situation that's been hanging over for 10 months. It's actually ludicrous, because maybe he's able to prove something that shows that he didn't cheat to get twice the allowed level of salbutamol, in which case there'll be no ban and everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. But if they give him a 9-month ban, then that would have started in September last year, and everything that he did between September and June this year will have to be wiped off. And you know it could happen as you're watching it. So how can you believe that result if Froome's on top of both podiums in those Grand Tours, and there's a better than likely chance he's going to have that result taken away? It's untenable.
Would it always be retrospective? Is there no way that they go from the day that we find the adverse finding, or we find that you need to serve a 9-month ban, that it's from that day forward, and so actually all he misses is the winter and the first 3 months of next year, and everybody is actually technically happy with that because the Tour result will stand, the Giro result will stand, and he'll be fit to come back to try and win 5 next year?
That could be the way they fudge it. You're right. I've not seen them do that before. Normally it's from the moment of that positive test, and they retrospectively ban you then that way. But that might be the way to do it. But even there, now if he's banned, then it means what? It means that there was evidence that he was either negligent or, worst case, I guess, for him, would be deliberately doping in the Vuelta last year. So now you've got a convicted doper going on to win the next 2 big tours that he rides in potentially. And how's that good for the credibility of the sport? Because now he's a known doper. So no matter how it goes, unless he's able to provide the evidence to show that he was completely innocent, there is no scenario here where cycling ends up looking good, even if they fudge it that way.
I haven't paid enough attention to his social media feeds over the years, but it seemed that was it a Strava detail that came out recently of like a 7.5-hour ride around South Africa? That was one of the first times that we had seen him go, oh look, I'm out in a training spin, everybody, I'm doing this level of training at this point. There was some speculation that was part of them trying to recreate conditions where they might be able to somehow synthesize the twice the level of salbutamol in the system. Is there any credence given to that theory that's doing the rounds at the minute?
Who knows? It seems plausible that that's what he's done, because he has to do that. He's got to figure out a way to to reproduce what happens in the 3rd week of a Grand Tour. So he's posted, as you say, a few of those rides. He could be trying to do that. From the sounds of what's come out, he has to show how a combination of extreme exertion plus dehydration plus fatigue could cause these elevated levels, given supposedly a kidney condition. So somehow he's got to trigger a repeat of a kidney condition and then recreate all the surrounding contextual circumstances. And yeah, I mean, maybe Froome does that every January, goes on these 45-kilometer-an-hour, 7-hour epic rides. But if not, then he's trying to do that now. And again, coming back to what I said earlier, I find it completely bizarre that you have what seems to be an indefinite period of time to try and figure out how you're going to prove your innocence. Like, basically, from the moment he was told that there was this positive test, he's been able to go away and just basically take one shot after another and trying to recreate it until eventually he does so, and then he can go to the court. To me, you should have to offer maybe not a detailed explanation, but some kind of theory for what happened, and then in a controlled circumstance recreate that. At the moment, it's just machine gun fire until he eventually lands on one that seems plausible. It's just, to me, it's a bizarre process.
Ross, let's create an alternate reality here where you're a physiologist for Team Sky and it is your job to protect Chris Froome to the very end of his career. What are you going to say to this fictitious hearing that may or may not happen to defend Chris Froome? How can you defend twice the level of salbutamol in one system?
Well, I mean, so the hearing has to happen. I mean, if they delay it indefinitely, there's a big problem. So I would go to that hearing, and I would do pretty much what they're trying to do. They've got to show that he's a 1 in a million, and that would have to require that he's got some kidney condition that appeared on that specific day. So he would have to go there and provide supporting evidence. He would have, first of all, you'd have to argue that he took the maximum allowed dose. So in other words, as you may know, the guidelines allow you to take a certain amount over 12 hours. It's 800 micrograms and 1600 over 24. He's got to build an argument that says, I took it at exactly this time and then here and here and here to maximize that. And then he would have to go and test himself under the most extreme dehydration and so on possible until he can try and recreate something as close to that value that he got as possible. And then he would have to try and say to them, now you see, because he's not going to get it in a lab. It's to me impossible. He's never going to get to 2,000. Maybe he can get to 1,100, 1,200. There's about 4 scientific studies that have done something similar, and that's the limit to what they can get. And then he's got to find an explanation for the next, call it 800, and that will be the kidney malfunction. So he can go so far using the recreation, I think, and then he's got to bridge that gap using a theoretical argument. And that theoretical argument will be, as I say, kidneys, and he will have to try and discredit the previous research. So I think that what they will do is they will bring in renal specialists and other pharmacology experts who basically attack and undermine the research on which that threshold is set. And they will try and argue that that threshold should be 2,000, not 1,000 as it currently stands.
Wow, a grim and dismal vista spreads out before us for the next God knows how long period of time. Obviously, the other thing that he needs is a bunch of journalists who are ready to interview him, and then he has to take some puffs of the inhaler just before he does that interview to fully replicate exactly the conditions of what happened at the Vuelta, because that's 100% believable too. I wanted to ask you before we let you go here, Ross, about Paula Radcliffe and the Twitter spat that you've been involved in with her over the last couple of days. This is really interesting to me because I would have assumed that if you're Paula Radcliffe, you kind of want to just make sure that people forget about a bunch of things that have happened in her career, the adverse results that came out on that were leaked as part of her blood passport, or biological passport rather. You know, it's not great to draw attention to that if you are Paula Radcliffe. It's not great to kind of have that as part of your history and her holding the sign up, and then to start arguing with people on Twitter about anti-doping.
Yes, no, I agree, and I wouldn't want to speculate why she's doing that, because I'm with you. I'd be flying as low under the radar as I possibly could. For me, the issue is this, and this is the background to the story. As you say, is that a number of years ago, the Sunday Times got hold of a number of blood values from Paula Radcliffe, and independent experts, anti-doping experts, had looked at those and said that they were extremely suspicious and highly suggestive of doping. Her argument was that there was context and explanations around when the samples were taken, the circumstances, she'd gone to altitude, she was dehydrated, and so forth. Then it came out that there were additional samples of Paula Radcliffe's which hadn't been released to the media, and that when she gave the totality of her blood samples to other independent experts, they exonerated her and said there's nothing to see here. Now, fine. The point is that if that's the case and you have all this data that exonerates you, then be open about it and be transparent. And in my opinion, when people call for transparency and point the finger and are outspoken against the doping of the Russians and other athletes who've cheated them, but they're unwilling to accept the calls and the requests for transparency and openness themselves, then that, for me, needs to be called out. It's not to say that her failure to publish her own data incriminates her as a definite doper, but it just seems to me unusual when people are asking for it, you are arguing that it completely exonerates you, then put it out there. You don't even give it to me. It doesn't need to be me or anyone else on Twitter, but just put out there the independent report and the independent evaluation of the total of your blood samples so that people can see that you've got nothing to hide. Because, as we've said, this whole discussion is about the lack of credibility in anti-doping and in the authorities who are tasked with it. So this appeal to higher authority is worth very little. Transparency, on the other hand, in my opinion, would be worth a great deal.
So we just put her tweet up there, and the central argument from Paula Radcliffe's side, and I should make this just to make sure that we can address the point, is that she believes that releasing the rest of the data, and I'll read it here, releasing the rest of the data might have protected my reputation, but at the cost of undermining and weakening the ABP. I'm not prepared to facilitate cheats evading punishment. Basically, the case that she's making is that by showing where you can get these high values that look like they're characteristic of a doper, if you can show that there is stuff around that, then there might be a template there for dopers to manipulate the biological passport. That's the case she's making. Is that a fair summation?
In my opinion, no. In my opinion, the biological passport is better the more data you have, and becomes more and more difficult as it becomes more and more robust and rigorous. And it's not as though elite athletes don't know how to microdose. They know how to manipulate the levels of the various blood values that are being measured using a combination, a little bit of EPO, a little bit of blood transfusion. They know what happens at altitude. They know exactly how to make those adjustments. So the data from one athlete is not going to give a toolkit for how to avoid biological passport detection. To me, that was a completely spurious argument, and it's actually the one that irks me more, because it's almost like I'm being noble here, taking a hit to my reputation so that other cheats can't get away with it. And it's simply beyond me how that would happen. If I'm missing something, and if other people are missing something, then I think there's value in having that discussion. In other words, tell us how athletes' biological passport data can help cheats get away with doping. Tell us how that would happen. But she wants to almost sort of eat her cake and then have it too, like say, if I did this, it would help athletes dope, but I'm not going to tell you how, and I'm not going to tell you what mine said, so now leave me alone and just have faith. And that, to me in sport, there's no such thing as faith anymore.
You said eat her cake and have it too. That's a quote from the Unabomber documentary or series on Netflix at the minute. I don't know if you're watching it or if that was on purpose or...
It wasn't. I heard it elsewhere, but
you should dig it out. You like it, I think.
Okay.
On the Radcliffe point, and like, where does that go from here? If she was to release her data, then there would be information in the public domain that we would all be able to see, and suddenly her positive, or her not positive, but her samples that had those higher values, there might be context for them, and that might be something that people could then kind of say, okay, we understand why that happened. That is the case in some instances in the biological passport, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what could happen? She's going to have elevated off scores, and this is the technical stuff on the passport, but she's going to have higher red blood cell count, her reticulocytes will maybe be lower, and those things are suggestive of blood doping or whatever it is. But we also, she could show that this was a period that she was at altitude, she was dehydrated there, so we'd expect to see certain changes. So again, coming back to her argument, what would we discover? That dehydration affects the value? We knew that. That altitude affects it? We know. There's very little that would be discoverable from her biological passport that would help prospective cheats in the future. But what there would be contextual evidence plus a whole lot more values than we saw before. Because before, I think we saw 5 or 6. Presumably now there'll be 10, 20 of them. And as I say, the biological passport improves with more data. So if anything, putting it out there improves the rigor and the robustness of that passport, and she would be able to argue to the doubters that there was nothing to answer for. Now, on that, my impression of this whole anti-doping world is that there's a large and growing population of cynics who believe doping is happening no matter what. Then there's a group of people on the other extreme who are the believers, who don't believe there's doping and they think things are far better than they are. And then there's a group in the middle who are perhaps not on the fence, but they can be swayed in one direction or another. Now, if you withhold information, all you're doing is you're entrenching the two sides of the debate, but you never speak to the group in the middle, whereas transparency would potentially shift people towards belief. You're never going to change the cynics, whether it's 30% of people who will never believe you. Doesn't matter what you do, they won't believe. But if you don't put something out there, there's a whole group in the middle that will also start to doubt you because it looks like you have something to hide. And this, by the way, is not unique to Paula Radcliffe. There's a South African triathlete, got third in the Olympics in Rio, called Henry Schoeman. And he was named 2-3 weeks ago in the Fancy Bears League, the latest of those. And the same situation for him. He may well have a plausible explanation for why he was taking a corticosteroid, but at the moment, because no one's explaining it, it looks like something's being covered up. And so to me, again, transparency matters, whether it's Schoeman or Radcliffe or cyclists or Kenyan marathon runners, whatever it is. Just put the information out there and let people see that you have nothing to hide.
Just one last quick one for me, Ross. Which do you think is more likely to happen in the near future? A man running a sub 2-hour marathon or a woman breaking Paula Radcliffe's marathon record?
That's a very good question. Before last year, I would have said the sub 2 marathon, but then Mary Keitany went to London and scared Radcliffe's record. When I say scared, I mean she's still a minute or so off it, but it's closer now than it was. We're closer to the women's world record than we are to sub 2. That said, other than Keitany, I don't see anyone else going there. So at this point, I would still lean towards a sub 2-hour marathon compared to Paula Radcliffe's 2:15:25. I think that one will last longer.
One last point. Jack Anderson, the lawyer who's now based in Australia and who is an anti-doping expert as well, says, we were just tweeting out comments, bits of it, about how the ban was always likely to be overturned by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Jack makes the point that the International Paralympic Committee imposed a stringent ban on Russia, which was upheld at the Court of Arbitration for Sports, and the IOC chose not to do the same thing that the Paralympic Committee did, which in and of itself suggests there is a pathway by which you can have these bans upheld by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But somehow the IOC didn't manage to do that.
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting point. Same thing happened in 2016 at the Rio Olympics. Was the IAAF managed to ban most of the Russians, but the IOC didn't. and then the Paralympic body managed to ban all of them. So that's actually really interesting, and I don't know enough about the law. Maybe you should get Jack on to talk about that specifically. But it would suggest, a lot of people were blaming the Court of Arbitration. They would suggest that in actual fact it was the package of evidence presented to them by the IOC that's to blame, and that again confirms when Richard Pound said that the IOC didn't do enough. It makes it seem like he was the one who was correct on that, and it's not Cass's fault.
I should actually give Jack his full title here. Professor and Director of Sports Law at Melbourne Law School, member of Court of Arbitration for Sport. So he obviously knows what he's talking about with that one, and it is an interesting difference, and probably something that I guess sheds a bit more light on why things have happened the way they have. Again, we await the reasoned decision, and as always, the devil will be in the detail. Ross, brilliant to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for giving us so much of your time.
No worries. Thanks, fellas. Good to chat, as always.
Thanks a million, Professor Ross Tucker there. Always really interesting with this stuff. It's good to just kind of refresh yourself about why this matters, how screwed up the whole situation is, and, why you should set information free.
I think this current landscape is so unbelievably important, and it's not as kind of interesting or as seedy as some of the previous doping stories, but I still think the CAS verdict is so unbelievably important to the future of integrity in sport, because these are the people that hold the keys to clean sport. As Ross outlined there, have WADA done a good enough job in the past at creating an environment where clean sport can exist? I think it's pretty easy to say that that hasn't been the case. This latest verdict is a very, very worrying thing, that the Russian bans have not been upheld, despite the compelling evidence from Grigory Rodchenkov that this was coming from the very top. And for them to shift the goalposts, that it would be brought down into a case-by-case basis, despite the fact that the most compelling evidence is a holistic piece of evidence, makes no sense whatsoever, and it is incredibly worrying. It's not going to get that much coverage, but it is such a vital step into our belief in the system, that at least if you've found somebody guilty of doping, they will get the required ban.
Yeah, I guess you end up with the semantics, legal arguments about whether or not it's fair to try a group of people with the same crime when everybody deserves their individual legal representation. And, this is your livelihood and you probably are entitled to that, while at the same time taking cognizance of the fact that you're part of a group of people who, it is alleged with fairly compelling evidence, has been systemically doped. We will speak with Jack at the earliest available opportunity, just to get his take on and whatever he's able to tell us about how the Court of Arbitration for Sport works, because the immediate response from everybody is like, what are they doing? Why are they letting this happen? But ultimately it's not their call. They're just a legal body who adjudicates, yes, you've adhered to the procedures, you haven't. We think the evidence is overwhelming here. That evidence is no good. Like, that's their job. It's not their job to police. It's not their job to be the ones who go, listen, IOC, you really screwed up here. We're going to let you away with that because you didn't dot the I's and cross the T's, or we think there's something else going on. So, pretty interesting.
Absolutely. It's always a fascinating chat with him as well. The Froome stuff is going to be very, is it going to be, are we going to be sitting here in 12 months' time, still not sure what the situation is? I suspect we probably will in 12 months, but maybe come the end of the season. I've got a feeling we're going to get to September before we've shut the door on this Froome punishment.
We should just go back to you hating Mayo fans and loving Tyrone fans. This is...
I don't love Tyrone fans.
Your question about who are your least favourite GAA supporters, Joseph helpfully tweeted that out, and people don't like the question.
Why would anybody dislike that question?
It's juvenile. This isn't primary school. You're not 7. Grow up, says Dahi O'Trohig.
It kind of is. I think it's a properly valid question. Like, everybody's got that set of supporters that, like, oh God, they're the worst. It always comes up in some sort of discussion.
This isn't soccer. We don't hate any other county supporters. We disagree from time to time, but that's the beauty of the hashtag GAA, says Martine.
I wonder where Martine's from. Probably not from Kerry, because we all seem to be bitter.
He is from, it says Ballycastle? Oh, Mayo Tourism.
Okay, maybe Mayo. Maybe it's a Kerry thing that we talk about other fans quite a bit.
I think their Dub supporters never arrive on time, and most of them are soccer supporters, as Michael Canan, fully engaging with the spirit of your question. Look at your Twitter icon, you absolute clown. It's a picture of it's a picture of the Spurs icon. Is the answer to Michael Canan's tweet about the Dub supporters being the soccer fans? What a bullshit question. This is not the Premier League, says Trevor Nocton, who's in a Mayo jersey. So you've got the Mayo fans on your case.
There's a little bit of a theme growing there with the people who dislike this question.
I would definitely like to distance myself from that question. We all love each other. We're all part of the true GAA family. We're the warm embrace of...
You're just sitting back and enjoying these explosions going off left, right and centre. You will keep this Kerry are dirty, Mayo are dirty too thing going.
I don't think any of those teams are dirty. I think that was a bad tackle. And bad tackles happen all the time. And somehow there needs to be punishment for those types of bad tackles where there's a risk of injury that prevents people from doing them. But as we see, punishment tends not to make people think about not doing stuff.
I'm not sure. So you want to prevent Ronan Shanahan going in for that ball when a guy's coming at him full speed, bearing down a goal, he's the last man.
There is an elbow up.
Okay, so
he shouldn't do that. And like, you know what you're going to do. So like we can pretend that this instance and all these other instances are grand, but actually they're not really.
But the elbow isn't pointed in his direction to the point where he's targeting the ball, say, with the elbow. He's going for the ball with his fist, and the elbow comes out like this. Evan Regan then turns into said elbow, and it's elbow to head, and it ends up being a horrible tackle, and it ends up being a horrible injury. I'm not denying that.
So there should be punishment for that.
Yeah, but he didn't elbow the player
so rather than talking about the specifics of that instance, right? There is still. The game has definitely vastly improved from the 80s and 90s, where haymakers were grand, where the best player was targeted, where boots would be left in, where punches would be like an odd punch here and there is going to happen. It's a very physical sport, and actually, if someone's looking at you, but sucker punches, late tackles from the side, all that kind of stuff.
Which doesn't include the tackle on Saturday night.
Stop talking about the tackle on Saturday night.
But that's what started it. That's what started it.
Okay,
you brought
but
it
you're
up
stuck in
today.
the whataboutery then. Yeah, but like, so we can't ever move the conversation beyond that.
Well, no, but I wanted to come back to the situation that you're moving this on to this umbrella of low blows, which you can't do as a result of Saturday night's tackle, because it wasn't a low blow.
It was 100% fine. You stand over it. You're happy you did it.
That's not what I'm saying either. If you think I'm saying,
what's the point of that then? Like, so we moving the conversation on, right?
Yes.
There needs to be severe punishment and a zero tolerance approach to that type of tackle, where the intention is clearly not to just shoulder somebody, but you're taking that risk. How do you make a stand? And ultimately, it all gets thrown out because they get Brawley to represent them in the CCCC hearing, and nothing ever progresses.
Well, that's a bit of a leap. I don't see how you can say that the intention isn't to stop the man and get the ball and do it in a legal fashion. I'm not sure you can make that leap from what happened.
End up talking about intention, and maybe Gaelic football is totally fine with those tackles that are on the edge that leave people out for 8 weeks, 12 weeks. But when it starts happening in the summertime to superstars, which is ultimately where this goes, where the ratcheting up of this acceptance of casual violence within sport goes, it's just not a good look. All I'm saying is that it's easier to take a stand than not.
I think it's equatable to accidental. Like, you can have an accidental horrendous challenge in the Premier League.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, like James McCarthy, totally accidental.
Yeah.
100% accept that. But any of those tackles that have happened against Manchester City where they're going for the knees, they're not accidental. They should all be banned for significant amounts of time.
See, that I agree with. But that I don't think applies to the situation.
A couple of quick tweets about the lifetime bans all around, says Kenneth Egan on Periscope. I think a lot of people would agree with that. It's just that they always end up getting overturned. If you make it an 8-year ban, it's effectively a lifetime ban for everybody, and I think that's fair enough. At Uncle_Walter, how you doing, Uncle Walter? Cycling shoots itself in the foot by letting Froome off the hook. He broke the rules. End of. Which I think is a fair point. Mark on Periscope says Ross is a genius at making common sense points and cutting through the BS. It's true. That's why we like talking to Ross Tucker. It's like, these are fairly complicated matters where you're talking about the milligrams of salbutamol and the impact that it has on non-asthmatics at points of the day when they're dehydrated after 7-hour rides. And he's like, that bit's not that important. Here's what's important. And that's why we really like getting him on. Joseph Conroy, who works here, who is a member of the team, says, I'd take a Mayo man any day and buy him a pint. But Kerry are head-wrecking. Joseph's a dub.
That's backstabbery right there. I can feel the knife coursing in just beside my spine there. That's horrendous stuff from a teammate.
Straight into your lungs.
Straight.
Sucking the air from them.
Well, I wasn't going to go that far, to be honest. But yeah, sure, go and take the description to this kind of vivid level like that. Why not? Why not to describe me losing my life? Well, thank you, Joseph, for that. Thank you for knifing me.
Armagh beat Kerry in 0-2. Owen's still hurting. Cheer up, lad. You look like our full-back from 0-2. Fancy value.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. I wish I was half the player he was.
Soccer type supportery coming into Intercounty GAA. Bring on Kerry/Mayo/Dublin Fan TV. Jesus. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, but that's certainly something that we'll be working on over the course of the summer because, you know.
Why not? That's what the world needs. More soccer references in GAA.
John Fogarty in The Examiner was making the case that post-match Vox Pops should be banned after the one on Air Sport where a Waterford fan was calling out one of their players with some of the harshest...
Kevin Moran.
Some of the harshest post-match stuff you're ever going to see. And I was like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, sometimes you should give a forum to show that the type of shit that people have to put up with. Because, like, the guy's not just saying that to the TV camera. He's shouting that at the top of his voice. Or, sorry, other people in that instance, not to personalise this, but other people are shouting worse stuff from the touchline. Mm-hmm. Like, the harshest critics are their people's own fans from their own clubs, frequently.
Yeah, absolutely, very often. So maybe a forum that's not the actual person who's broadcasting the game, but maybe, you know what, let everybody see it. Let as many people as possible see the sort of stuff that these people have to put up with. I think it's actually a good enough shout. I'd like just enough on the soccer stuff, the thing that, oh, is this a soccer debate? It's not. That's never what it was about. This was experiences in Croke Park. That's what sparked this whole thing.
Yeah, intercounty rivalry is totally fine.
I think so too, and so is Mayo Fan TV when we initially stand outside McHale Park.
Well, Mayo Fan TV, it's basically off the ball on Thursday nights when Kev and Nathan are on, right?
Oh, burn.
Hey. Right, Ruby Walsh was in with us last Friday night. Here he is on why he's removed himself from all forms of social media.
Yeah, but probably looked at it differently now. I just kind of thought, now I look at it and think, like, what difference does it make what somebody online thinks?
It's hard to ignore people's chirping in your ear. It's like the basketball player who goes into the crowd. Everybody goes, why did you do that? He's just some drunk douchebag. And it's like, yeah, but he was screaming at me.
He was screaming, look, I don't have to go into the crowd. I'm the other side of the railing. But I think I just stopped reading what was online.
Yeah.
Not that I ever read it that much. I had to use Twitter commercially. I don't use Twitter. Don't have a Facebook page. Don't do Snapchat, Instagram.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm in any worse off for not being part of that.
Yeah.
Cyber world.
So that's not going to hasten any kind of sense of getting fed up with it. It's like,
no, I stepped out of the cyber world. I think that I think the cyber world will be a big issue down the line.
Yeah.
I think it's ungoverned.
In terms of people's mental health?
Yeah. I think it's ungoverned. I think it's in newspapers can't write what individuals can write in the cyber world. And I think it will become an issue, a massive issue down the line that to me is spiralling out of control. I'm glad I'm not on it, but I do worry about my kids and how smartphones and the cyber world is going to affect their lives. I don't think it'll be as innocent and nice a life as I grew up in.
No, it's already kind of grotesque.
Childhood even. Yeah. Not life, obviously. Some stage you have to grow up, but I think your childhood innocence will go at younger ages. And I don't know what that make for a better population, a better race, or a better world.
Doesn't seem like it will. No, it seems grim. Like my eldest is 6, and I'm terrified about what is in store for her and her class. Like,
yeah, I just think it's we've created this monster, and I think only we can stop it. And I think we're far too worried about what every Tom, Dick, and Harry is saying about us. Go back to the world when you didn't know what they were saying about you.
I always found it interesting that Steve Jobs wouldn't give his kids iPhones. He was like, no, my kids can't have screens. Like, the rest of the world can have them, but like the guy who invented this thing is like, no, that's a dangerous thing that he wouldn't give his kids until they were old enough to actually know how to use it properly. So I think that might be something I might try, but fail to do. It's like,
should the other side of the coin is they'll end up in school and being bullied for not having one.
Yeah, so no, it's true.
Where do you balance that one?
It's
we can't just chat all day, Ger.
It is a high wire act. Yeah. One of Ireland's most interesting sports people, and unbelievably thoughtful stuff about a topic that you hear a lot about. Only we can stop it was the line that stuck out for me there, and I don't know how. I mean, every time somebody comes up with a suggestion, it's generally ludicrous, and it's generally from people who don't use social media. Oh, we need to get, like in America, social security numbers or the national identity card here, which, you know, we don't need to have, but absolutely you do need to have. So the treatment of sports people on Twitter and on social media has reached that point where it's a megaphone for clowns. And frequently you'll see people retweeting, quote tweeting something really bad that was said. And I tend to click on that to see who the person who's saying the bad thing is. And more than often than not, they have like 25 followers or 50 followers. And you think, oh, why don't you just ignore that person? But when it's somebody shouting at you in your ear about you being a scumbag or a shit or a liar or a thief or whatever, it's hard to ignore. Like, it's hard to ignore that. It's human nature to go, what did you say? What did you say about me? And having the thick skin to be able to deal with that is not something that everybody's equipped with. And particularly when you start talking about small groups, like your peer group, when you're 9, 13, 15, 17.
It's a ludicrous problem, and that's why there are ludicrous solutions that are being aired out there, that none of those solutions that I've ever heard are going to fix this issue. I would imagine, like, there's nobody, certainly in Ireland, who could speak from experience more than Ruby Walsh, because of just the gambling industry and the way that people have cash riding on him at a certain point, and that they feel this legitimate sort of anger or feel this sense of injustice about things, and then feel that it's correct for them to then resort to Twitter and spout absolutely horrendous stuff about somebody like Ruby Walsh. And like I know there's a lot worse stuff said than this, but the most common one that we all see is the one about, oh, Ruby deliberately threw himself off his horse there or whatever, which is absolutely ludicrous, and it just kind of shows the nonsense that is spouted. Of course, that's not as bad as the absolutely vile personal abuse that can sometimes pop up. And maybe does it come back to your point about fan TV and the likes of Kevin Moore and amateurs being under that level of abuse as well? Maybe, obviously, with a mic in your hand and you're staring down the camera, you're not going to say the stuff that there is the anonymity to Twitter. And maybe the anonymity, as you just outlined there, is the reason why this stuff exists. And as you say, that's why those ludicrous solutions come out, because what are they targeting? They're targeting the anonymity.
Yeah, and maybe there is some way of fixing that. But again, these are all companies that have floated on the stock exchange and have a share price to mind. And if you suddenly announce that 3/4 of your accounts don't meet your terms and conditions, then your advertising revenue goes down, and you can't actually do that. You can't make that decision. Your shareholders won't allow you to. And so we're trapped in a situation that we have where everything needs to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the platform becomes bigger and bigger and more polluted by people who aren't really interested in being part of a normal conversation. So it's tricky, because obviously freedom of speech is one of the central tenets of a proper democracy.
Yeah, I wonder, is there going to be a ceiling for Twitter that I think we may be nearing right now, that there is kind of a turn, particularly in the Trump era, where people are just starting to say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm deleting my account. I don't expect Twitter to do anything about this, despite the multiple reports that I've filed or whatever against certain people who feel empowered by his presidency. They suddenly feel this is it. This is what Twitter has turned into. It's turned into a cesspit. I'm getting off this. I feel that point is almost reached, and maybe not with sport yet, but certainly when it comes to political views, I think that point is edging ever closer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a microcosm, really, a macro example of the conversations that all parents are having about what the hell you do with social media and your kids. And I Sure as shit, don't have the answer right now. Let's move on. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, you can tweet us at Off The Ball. Or at Off The Ball AM, indeed. If you want to just know about when this show goes live in the mornings, you can get an audio only feed if you're driving and you want to hear the show every morning around breakfast time from 7:45 to about 9:15 most days now. You'll get us at offtheball.com. On the website there's a button you can just click and listen to your heart's content. And of course we're on Facebook, and all of our longer form interviews go up on YouTube, so you can subscribe there if any of the sports content is to your liking. Now, Scott Evans gave us one of our most recent brilliant Olympic memories. Owen was certainly most impressed by his ability to get people in the crowd ripping their shirts off. That's a moment when you know you've reached crossover appeal. But unfortunately, he's announced that he's had it with the sport. Scott, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you guys?
How difficult is the ultimate decision to go, you know what, I've reached the peak, I've had a great innings, and that's me done now?
Yeah, it's not easy decision to make. But yeah, obviously, I think every athlete knows that at some point they're going to have to make the decision. And obviously, I started to think about it back in November. Couple of reasons behind my decision. My body hasn't been great the last while, so I've had a couple of injuries, which is, on and off, which has been tampering my training quite a bit. Then in November time, I got a decent opportunity. I got asked about being involved in something here in Copenhagen, so that was also another part of it. And then I think due to having a lot of injuries, I suppose, I've kind of lost that kind of desire and that kind of love to go down to the training hall every day and give that same effort that I know I have to and that I love doing. I've kind of lost that the last couple of months, and I know that there's no point in going on with it when I'm not 110%, because I need to be at 110% if I'm going to play my best badminton. So it's a very difficult decision to make, but I really feel like it's the right time for me to take the step back now.
It's funny, we obviously were playing a clip from our Ruby Walsh interview there, and it's obviously something that he gets asked about repeatedly. Until Tony McCoy retired, he used to go, Tony McCoy's older than me and I'm not going until he goes. And now Tony McCoy is gone, he's got to come up with a different answer. And his answer was, I still enjoy it and I still feel the competitive urge, but there will come a time when I'm just fed up and I don't want to do it anymore. And it sounds like you just got a bit fed up around last November.
Yeah, it's fed up. I got a little bit tired of traveling to the tournaments. I've been doing that for almost 15 years. And then obviously, not training as best as I can. And that can be due to injuries. It can be down to a couple other things. Then I always, I'm not really up for traveling to tournaments when I know I'm not at my best. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of things, but I'm sure I'll miss the competitive side of it. I'm still gonna train a lot. I still love playing badminton. I still love training. So I'm still gonna continue doing that for as long as I can. I want to keep in as good shape as I can, and I want to keep doing what I love and what has been such a big part of my life for the last 15 years.
Do you have a post-retirement plan? It's always like, you talk to athletes so often, and the biggest difficulty is transitioning to become a civilian and just having that routine stripped from your life.
Yeah, I have a clothing company here in Copenhagen with my girlfriend actually. We've had that for 3 years now, so I've been doing a bit with that. It's the last 3 years, so I'll probably do a little bit more with that. And then in June, I'm going to be opening up an academy here in Copenhagen with a former player. I can't release his name at the moment, but he's a big name in badminton. And to have that opportunity to go along and work with him is a big opportunity. And if I decided to go on for another 6 months or another year in badminton, this opportunity might not be there at that time. So that was another big reason why I decided to stop now and go over to the other side, to the coaching side, and give this a good shot.
You mentioned there, Scott, that you had lots of desire to go down to the training hall every day. What did that training routine involve? Was it very tedious? Was it you and one other partner going at it for hours?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different things. It could be me and one other player just going to the hall in the mornings, 2.5 hours, just full on different exercises. It's very physical. You know, and then in the afternoons it's gym session. That could be weight training or more physical, like on the bike or running. And then in the evening again, it's another 2 hours back on the court doing different types of technical work, tactical work, stuff like that. So yeah, using 4 to 6 hours a day training, and you really need to have that desire and that love to continue doing that. And I've been doing it for many years, and I could just feel towards the end that same feeling towards it is it's not the same anymore. And you know, it was a really difficult decision for me to make, but deep down I know it's the right time to do it. So.
Because ultimately it's a very difficult thing to do it over 3 Olympic cycles, especially when it's a solo sport. You can't look around the dressing room and there will be other teammates driving you on.
Absolutely. It is obviously an individual sport, and especially because of the way I have done things in my career. I left Dublin at 16, came over to Denmark on my own, and I've kind of had to look after myself quite a lot. There's been plenty of times during my career where I've had no coach. I've had to be my own coach. I've had to organise my own sparring partners. I've had to organise my own training, my own fitness programs, everything on my own. And I think, to be honest, that's also just taking a toll on me as well. I just don't have it in me anymore to use all my energy on myself as a coach and also as a player. So yeah, it can get quite lonely at times.
Here's the thing, right? We should start talking about stuff like this, because it is an amazing thing that you managed to do to bring badminton into the living rooms of every home in Ireland. Like, there was probably no point in the last 35 years when the sport had as much profile as it did when you were ripping your shirt off and becoming one of the stories of the Olympic Games. So, like, I know it's an emotional decision when you turn finally the lights out on that chapter, but ultimately you've got to be really happy with what you've achieved.
Absolutely. I mean, I was saying yesterday to a few people, like where I started back in when I was 14, started to train full time in Dublin. There was no other professional players. There was no full-time coach. There was nothing. Obviously now I've had 3 Olympic Games, and Chloe has also had 3 Olympic Games. We have European junior medalists. We've a full-time coach. We have a national centre in Dublin. So to see not only myself, but to see the whole sport, improving from 15 years ago to where we are now. And I know obviously in the next couple of years there's going to be more and more to come for badminton, and also if you want to look at the media side of it as well, badminton's more and more in the media. I tried to do my part in getting it in the media as much as possible. Rio obviously helped quite a bit. So yeah, it's been a really incredible journey, not only for myself but for the sport in Ireland, I think, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Was Rio the highlight?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, London was amazing as well to play against the eventual winner in the first round. I mean, it's not a great draw, but great atmosphere, great experience, and then there was also some very good nights out in London. That was really special. But yeah, Rio in terms of badminton, it has to be my biggest highlight. That and winning the Irish Open in 2012 is 2 things that I'll remember for the rest of my life for sure.
What's your hope for where the sport goes in Ireland now? Like, how mainstream can it become?
I don't know. It's always going to be difficult when you're up against football, rugby, golf, tennis maybe. You've got GAA, stuff like that. There's, I suppose, a lot of funding goes behind these sports. You've got some of the biggest stars around the world from Ireland. So we're up against it, but to see where we've come the last 15 years, it really is incredible. And who knows what can happen. It's down to the players now to put in the effort, to put in the work, to get good results. And if they continue to do that, hopefully more and more media will come out of that and continue building the sport in Ireland, because I think it has great potential. There's a lot of good junior players around. And yeah, I think it's a great sport, and as a lot of people saw it in Rio, they seem to enjoy it. So I think I think Irish people they want to see a little bit more of it, get it on TV if they can. But take it step by step. But I think in the next couple of years, if we can keep improving it, keep building the profile, it'll be very, very good. Well,
listen, congratulations on a remarkable career. I mean, you did literally make badminton a topic of conversation in people's homes in Ireland, which must have seemed like an impossible feat when you started out as a teenager. So best of luck with everything that comes next, and congratulations. Thank you very much, guys. Scott Evans there. Very few people become synonymous with a single sport in their country, and he did.
Yeah, basically. He mentioned Chloe McGee as well. Like, they're probably the two leaders that, like you mentioned badminton, you're going to mention one of the two of them, and of course that iconic moment in Rio. It's interesting that he's going to stay in Denmark, and the other thing that I picked up on there as well was that he mentions tennis as a competitor to badminton, because like obviously we know about Denmark being one of the world leaders when it comes to badminton, but then you look at Caroline Wozniacki winning her first slam a couple of weeks ago. That
do two things.
Obviously, like, is there kind of like a racket culture that, the way you go around the back of your house when you're a kid here and you're kicking a round ball, or in certain parts of the country you're kicking an oval ball? Like, is that the case in countries? Is there a racket culture where you're going up against the wall, and it doesn't matter what ball you're banging up against the wall, you will then develop into a badminton or a tennis player that can go to the highest level? It is a complete culture thing, and I just wonder, is that the case in areas of Denmark?
Yeah, it seems that way. Okay, a couple of quick comments. Well said, Ruby. Kids' tablets with restricted time are the way to go for all under 12s. So somebody, Jesus, I don't know, but any access to a tablet under 12? Like, is there a point where you just go, no, can't do that? I mean, you can't really, because it's too late. The genie's out of the bottle. But did you talk about Josh McDaniel staying with the Pats? Asks Adrian Bain. We did, right at the top of the show, because it was the news that happened overnight. So a WhatsApp group that I'm in with a bunch of Pats fans, they're kind of happy, but also a little bit they think there's a conspiracy theory that it's some kind of stitch up. It's like
revenge for the Flakegate.
Like, let's go, send Joshy out, do a bit of scoping, see how healthy Andrew Luck actually is, and then what are their plans? Come back and go, we'll kill them in the playoffs again next year. There was some suggestion that he might have got some sense of when Belichick's actually going, but the early reports are that McDaniels has no information on when, or no written undertaking that he's going to be the next Pats coach. But you have to assume that he's not staying around to be the offensive coordinator for the next Patriots coach.
Unless Tom Brady went to Bob Kraft and was like, I can't work with anybody else, it has to be Josh. And he then goes, right, okay, Tom wants you, and I want Tom. I will pay you whatever you want, just don't go to Indianapolis. And what age is Josh? Like, he's still a relative fledgling when it comes to a coaching career, is he?
I think he's younger than Tom Brady.
Okay, well, in that case, he's got plenty of time. He's like...
It's 41, he's a year older.
Well, there you go. I mean, he could do another decade and still have time to go off and be a head coach somewhere else for 20 years and be very, very successful. So, like, is there a part of him that thinks, I just want to work with Tom Brady for a little bit longer?
Maybe the Patriots are going to change their mind on the Garoppolo trade, was how that conversation, maybe Bob Kraft's going to change his mind, how that conversation with one of my Pats buddies. Too late. Jimmy G's a free man. No longer the clutches of the despicable despots at the Patriots organisation.
You're already desperately looking forward to next year's NFL campaign after this dreadfully long off-season, because Jimmy G will presumably take San Francisco to the playoffs.
And beyond.
And beyond? Super Bowl?
25-1. Get on it right now.
Okay, I will do that, and I'll come back to you weeping when I've put all my assets on Jimmy G to win a Super Bowl.
Well, you'll have a good old year.
Yeah?
I'm getting on it. That's...
Well, you're a San Francisco fan.
I know, it's ridiculous. Right, let's move on. So, reports overnight as well that this man might be returning to the Premier League.
Woo! It's Monday, baby! It's Monday! Hey, hold on. Hey, you think you're the only one can fly, Michael Jordan? Let's see. See you in a minute. I've got a little surprise for you.
Feel my juice, and I'll be all you need. Feels so right, girl. Massage.
There you go. Patrice Evra rejoining West Ham. West Ham now have like 140 years between their back four.
Yeah, it's great to see him back. I mean, he is one player whose profile has grown exponentially in the advent of social media, because he arrives pre-social media, just before social media really starts to kick off at Manchester United. We don't get to know him that well, and he grows into obviously a great player for United. He goes off to Italy, to France, and in the interim period has become an Instagram superstar that everybody roundly worships on Instagram, despite the fact that he kicked a fan and was banned forever. It doesn't matter, because Patrice Evra is a legend on Instagram and everybody wants him back here in the Premier League.
Yeah, he got forgiven pretty quickly. I mean, Cantona got forgiven pretty quickly as well. You just point out that the guy that Cantona kicked, well, he racially abused me, so off you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't... Was there a reason for whatever the Marseille fan was saying to him? I'm not so sure, but anyway, the lengthy ban was handed down, and I'm sure that ban is almost up. It was like a 6-month ban, was it?
I don't know.
Would he be able to kind of circumvent that ban? I don't know. But
these are questions which we will immediately Google and get the answer to as soon as we go off air. But for now, that's pretty much all we've got time for on today's show. Tomorrow, you've got some good stuff coming your way.
We do indeed. We've got a good hurling panel coming up. I've got Jack Guiney and Dotsie O'Callaghan, so a two-man panel. It's actually, we recorded it on Monday. It is some very, very interesting stuff in it. There's kind of talk about the identity of being a hurler. Obviously, Guiney has issues previously with getting booted off the Wexford panel, and it just kind of proposed a question at the time. There was a good piece in the Sunday Independent with Guiney's father talking about, does Jack want to be a hurler? Does he want to be identified as such? And of course, Jack Guiney's a teammate of Lee Chin, and that has sparked that debate about your identity as a hurler or as a person who happens to play hurling. And Dotsie O'Callaghan happens to be very, very good on that topic as well. So it's interesting stuff on that. And of course, we chat Davy and we chat Pat Gilroy as well.
Yeah, and Alan Quinnan's going to be in because the team for the game on Saturday against Italy will also be named. And in the midst of all this, of course, Wales are playing England at Twickenham on Saturday. That will be an absolute barn burner of a match. So we'll be talking about that as well. And tonight is Wednesday night, so Wednesday Night Rugby with Keith Wood on the radio and loads of other stuff as well. But for now, that's pretty much all you got on OTB AM. Follow us on whatever social accounts you like to use. Check out the website offtheball.com. We'll see you tomorrow.